It doesn't get much better than this. In fact, it can't get any better than this today, Mark. We've got a 5.7 litre V12 Ferrari. You're going to drive it on the roads, on the twisty stuff. We've got a beautiful day. It couldn't get any better, could it?
Well, it could get a little bit better. One thing that hasn't aged well with this car is the transmission, the flappy paddles. It's a little clunky, it's a little slow, and it does take away a little bit from the driving experience for you. So I don't know if there's something we can do about that.
There is. Are you ready? You want to say goodbye to that?
Goodbye.
There you go. You asked for it and I delivered.
How did you do it?
Magic.
We now have a manual, gated Ferrari gearbox.
There's only one thing to do now.
Let's get this thing on the road.
Yep. Yes, it's true, viewers. Today we have not one but two Ferrari 575 Maranellos. Virtually identical cars, except one has the semi-automated manual automatic gearbox and one with its 6-speed manual. So we're going to drive both.
We've been doing our channel for a few years now and we love all the cars that we get to review, but I've been really looking forward to today, and it's going to be really special and unique, and I really have a soft spot for any Ferrari, but particularly a V12 front engine Ferrari. It's the same gearbox, it's the exact same gearbox as the manual Maranello, just actuated by paddle shift. So it was, you know, I guess Ferrari's early days for paddle shift cars. At the time, I remember everyone wanted a paddle shift car.
It was all the thing. The Formula One cars were doing it.
No one wanted even with the 360s at the time, no one wanted a manual. Everyone wanted paddle shift. I just feel with these earlier paddle shift cars as well, when you're sitting at a red light or a stop sign like we are now, I like to flick it into neutral.
Oh yeah, just so it's not.
It's just
hard. Working that clutch.
It's hard on everything when you're sitting there in gear for 30-40 seconds waiting for a light to change. So pull both paddles, pull it into neutral. You do need a degree of mechanical sympathy driving these.
Whoop, car coming. I'm coming. I was desperately afraid he'd just dive into that gap.
He was coming in a bit quick, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. That's the thing when we're driving cars like this. Things happen. You know, garbage trucks pull out on you and people on their phone veer over to do it straight at you. It's terrifying. So this looks like a little toy selector, doesn't it?
It's a really little gimmicky, little dinky idea, isn't it? I mean, which just looks terrible, doesn't it?
Nothing in this car looks terrible, Mark. It's just... Viewers, I have to say, as much as I like my EVs, you know I do, but this is fantastic. I could hardly sleep last night. Are you excited as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a bit giddy because I still love a really good classic sports car, and honestly, 5.7 litre V12 Ferrari motor, smooth as butter.
Yeah. So if I go into sport there, I think it just stiffens the suspension up. I don't think it changes the...
Yeah, it's got adaptive dampers, so the sport mode...
does the adaptive dampers, but I don't think it changes the shifting.
No.
Whereas these days you go into sport for anything, it really tightens that up dramatically.
This is really a last century car. Modern Ferraris, everything's on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
You've got the Manettino, you've got buttons and lights, and it's all different colours. There are no controls on the wheel, except for your paddle shift. Gee, it revs freely. What was that? 6.5 or?
4,000, 4.5.
Oh, really?
And I was only half throttle. I was really lucky back in the late 90s, early 2000s to have a sponsor of mine here in Sydney who had a 550 Maranello Ferrari.
Oh yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to be able to drive that anytime I wanted. So I drove it a lot, and I had a lot of experience in it. I absolutely fell in love with that car. This car is the evolution. It's the 575M, so it's better in a lot of ways. in terms of the way the car's constructed, the electronics, it's just a much more updated car. The engine is a little more responsive. The 575 just increased in capacity and power a little bit.
But it's a heavier car.
It's a heavier car. It's good, what, 200 kilos heavier?
Yeah, no, 100 kilos.
100 kilos heavier, so
Yeah.
it's a fair bit heavier, isn't it?
It went from, they're actually not light cars. It went from 1710 to about 1810. So probably mainly thanks to the automated mechanism on the gearbox.
Yeah, look, and that was the big change from the 550 to the 575 was the fact that they went paddle shift. And it was one of those things that the manuals kind of fell out of favour, but at the time when I drove the 575M back in, probably 2003-4,
Yep.
even then I didn't really like the paddle shift. It just didn't really work with the big V12 engine. It was okay with the 3.6 in the 360 Modena.
Uh-huh.
But with the big V12 it just didn't work, and it wasn't quick enough. You just couldn't control the clutch
Yep.
the way a driver would be able to control it.
Yep.
Of course, your current Ferraris, paddle shift, Porsches, PDKs, they're outstanding, as we know. We've driven many of them.
Yep.
But at this point in time, they really just didn't have it right, and
Okay.
it really shows in the car.
Right, impressions down here. This is a very bumpy road, as we know. We did the
Yeah.
Boxster review down here. It was quite a compliant car. This is a little stiffer, but you'd expect it to be. This is a proper GT car.
So I've just softened the suspension off, Stu. You can probably hear in my voice wavering there. I had it on the sports setting, and for this bumpy road it was just too stiff. Adaptive dampers, they work really well.
Yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about the paddle shift and how it works down through here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Because I'll be honest, it's pretty slow, it's pretty clunky. It just doesn't shift quick enough. It doesn't give you the really nice blip that you expect to have on a paddle shift car these days, so a lot of that is missing. And you've got this little bit of limbo between the upshifts and also with the downshifts. You can feel there I'm in third. If I go down to second, it's a slow downshift, isn't it?
Yep.
And the upshift, it's a real lurch into that gear. So
Okay.
I'm sure if we were on a track and I was right up close to red line, that would be shifting much more effectively than that.
Yep.
And I mean, the engine is so willing,
Yep.
but that upshift is so slow, you lose so much momentum.
Well, why don't we, as a special treat just for you, take this one back, park it, and then I'll get you a proper one exactly the same, but with a 6-speed gated manual. Would that make you happy?
Stu, that would make me very happy.
I'm still giddy with the thought we've got two 5.7 litre V12 Ferraris. As usual, folks, we're being pretty cautious around these corners because it's cyclist hour. Lots of bikes around. We don't want to scare anybody, especially not ourselves.
It's quick, isn't it? Like, that's a seriously quick car.
Yeah.
And that definitely accelerates, from my memory,
Yeah.
quicker than a 550 Maranello.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But it's just so frustrating. But you can drive an old car and it's not going to be anywhere near the current technology. You realise that, but
Oh, it's amazing though.
the paddle shift really does let the car down.
Just talking automatics, after going way back to the late 60s, early 70s when they had the Daytona, Ferrari went more to 2+2s. The 365 GT4, 2+2, and then the 400i and the 412, they also offered automatic cars, but they were a 3-speed General Motors automatic. Can you imagine how terrible that'd be in this car?
That'd just be awful, wouldn't it?
People still bought them. Still 3/4 of the cars they sold were automatics, rather than a 5-speed gated manual.
That's right.
You go, what are you thinking, guys? No wonder this looked appealing to people that wanted an automatic.
The vast majority of these cars in the world are paddle shift, I believe.
Yeah.
That's 2,000 worldwide. There's only 246 manuals
Yeah, correct.
in the world.
And they're mainly almost all left-hand drive, of course.
Yeah, very rare to have a right-hand drive manual one of these. You do need to have a little bit of mechanical sympathy when you drive them. When we drive the current range of Ferraris and or Porsches, you don't need to lift the throttle, you don't need to help the thing into gear. It just all happens so quickly.
Yeah.
This car actually responds to having a little lift off the throttle on the upshift. it does change a little more nicely. Then it sort of starts to defeat the purpose of having a paddle shift transmission in the first place.
Yeah. So this car's... Oh, geez, that does pull, doesn't it?
Gets up and pulls really nicely, doesn't it?
Wow. And it's so smooth.
Is there anything better than a Ferrari V12 engine, Stu? I don't think there is.
Well, Enzo said he doesn't build cars, he builds engines and he puts wheels on them.
Yeah. But I love the feel of the car in terms of the body control.
Yeah.
The weight of the steering is just sensational. It just turns in so nicely.
Yeah. The seats actually are very, very firm. Really good lumbar support, but not a real lot of lateral support. We'll see what the other car's like. Take me home, James, and let's get the manual.
A beautiful car. I love every part of it.
Yep.
In terms of the way the car looks, the way the car drives. What lets it down is the paddle shift.
We'll swap it over and get another one. Because I want to keep you happy. I've got to... You're the talent in this show. I've got to keep you happy.
Don't forget it.
No, okay. Well done. That's why you earn the big bucks and I just do the editing. Now, because you made it halfway through the video, thank you. And I'm going to share something very special that I hope might encourage you to subscribe to our little channel and help make it a not-so-little channel. Firstly, a massive thank you to Miles, who lent us his beautiful Ferraris today. And now, Mark's itching to get back in the other 575, so let's go.
Goodbye.
There you go. Magic.
Thank you, Miles from Cavallino Motorsport, for supporting us with this. And it's a great engineering concept, isn't it? To take the 575M, which is a great car in every aspect, apart from the flappy paddles, which just weren't much good, and to go and put a really well-engineered manual Ferrari gate gear shift into the car, complete with all the little click-clack sounds that we like to have. It's now been converted. So
you would never ever know.
An Australian conversion, and you really wouldn't know. With a manual clutch here, we've got a clutch pedal there. If you fry the clutch on this car, it's down to the driver. The interesting thing with, jumping straight out of the paddle shift car and into the manual is you now get some engine braking with this car. You come off the throttle and I'm feeling that big V12 just pulling the speed back a little bit. We actually didn't get that in the paddle shift car. We can give that a nice blip down to second gear there.
It's quite notchy, the gearbox, isn't it?
It's hardly been used. We are literally the test drivers for this car. I think it's driven about 20 Ks. You can't really pussyfoot around with a gate gearbox. You need to be, I'm not going to say aggressive, but you need to be firm with it.
Assertive. Assertive
is the word. So you don't slam it into gear, but likewise, it's not really a fingertip thing either.
It's a really smooth revving motor. Over 500 horsepower. We've always said 500 horsepower is the right number. I mean, that's GT3 power.
That's right. Third gear.
And yet the maximum torque peak's quite high. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I love how you can just, again, this manual conversion turns this car into a real driver's car.
I'm putting my window down a little bit.
Oh, a bit of a wet road there.
Yeah.
A little bit of traction control, Stu.
Yeah. I'll jump out.
Yeah, okay. That's freed up even now, that actually.
Has it?
It's just really interesting, the conversion that Miles and the guys at Cavallino Motorsport have done. They've really taken what I'm loath to say this, but in comparison to the 550 Maranello, because the 575 has always been a little unloved simply because of that paddle shift transmission.
Yep.
And so what they've done is they've removed that impediment, and they've just opened this 575M up to be a really sought after car.
Yeah.
The original Ferraris were front engine V12 cars, and they continue that theme right through the 50s, 60s and 70s, I think into 74 with the Daytona. And then they weren't anymore for a long, long time until the 550 Maranello. Sounds superb, doesn't it?
It just, you think there's more to go, but you're actually at 7,500 revs there. Yeah. It's actually not very loud as well. Okay.
It's got an Answer exhaust on it, this car. It's sort of up around that, 6,500, 7,000. It's singing quite nicely, but it's understated, isn't it? For a big car, they sit really flat in the corners. Not a lot of body roll. They seem under-braked by modern standards when you look at the size of the brake rotors. We're used to seeing brake rotors that are pretty much the same size as wheels these days, aren't we, on cars? Yeah. In real terms, they're not. I mean, I'm sure if you were on the track, it'd soon be fading, but there's more than enough brake on the road.
And it's a genuine 200 mile an hour car. The 550 was a 199 mile an hour car. Although I doubt we'll be doing that today. Oh yeah.
Beautiful. And you can just really fine-tune that throttle on a nice constant radius bend like that, keeping a little bit of weight on the rear of the car. It just gives you that bit more drivability than you had with a paddle shift.
What's it like in sixth? There's a drone in the high gears. There's fifth. And top gear, and it's barely not even 2,000 RPM. Nice burble and crack from the exhaust. I love that this car's not in your face. This colour, Tour de France blue.
Yeah, beautiful colour.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's too tempting, isn't it?
How good is that, Stu?
Yeah.
It is too tempting.
Yeah, it is too tempting. That's so frustrating. That's the problem with these cars, isn't it? It just says, just rev me out. If you'd like to buy one in Australia, I found 2 575s and 3 550s. And they range in price from about $330,000 to the sky's the limit.
No, you won't lose money on one of these. If you want one, go and get one.
You might have to go to the UK though, where I found another 16 of them. I found 10 575 Maranellos over there. And the interesting thing was only one of them was red.
Yeah.
One red, one yellow, and the rest of them silver, grey or black.
The gearbox is really sweet, Stu.
Yeah.
The way they've calibrated that.
Thanks to you. Since you got in it, it's got better.
Well, we've already done more Ks on this conversion than the owner has. So, look, I've driven the F12, I've driven the 812 Superfast, and they are just incredible. However, I think this is more fun. I really do think it's a more fun car to drive. It's not as fast. It's nowhere near. However, just such a greatly balanced vehicle.
What's the steering feel like? Is it heavy?
It's got a really nice weight to it, really old school sort of mechanical power steering feel to it. Very sharp. It's reasonably heavy, which is how I like it.
The ride's it's firm. I was expecting a little bit more, well, not Jaguar, but you know what I mean, just a little bit more compliance and roll over the crest, but it's planted, isn't it? It's firmly stuck down.
And I think cars from this era, Ferrari, from the Montezemolo period of time when he really got in and restructured that organisation, they were winning Formula One World Championships, they were making the best F1 cars. It's almost like this car was created without necessarily a budget or a price in mind. It was just, let's have the best of everything.
Yeah.
And you can see, and the best build quality, they've just done it so well with this car.
Hey, we've done a few Ferraris now, haven't we? We've done the Dino, if you can call that a Ferrari. There's the review up there. We did your 360, which was lovely. And, oh, the most gorgeous of all so far, the 458 Speziale. That was fabulous, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mid-engine, V8, lightweight, 1,300 kilos, as I remember, something like that. This is 1,800 kilos. So that's half a tonne more.
You just can't compare them, and this is a Grand Tour and behaves as such, but just a beautiful car to drive.
So yeah, there are plenty of Ferraris on the channel. Have a look. That's better. Got a bit of smoother road. That's nicer, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you don't have to rev it. Look, we're doing 2,000, 3,000 revs.
I like how you can just skip a gear, just went from 5th straight to 3rd, give it a nice blip on the throttle on the downshift. Doing all that myself as a driver is one of the reasons you love Ferraris, to be able to drive it in that manner. And we've already said it a few times, Stu, but you know, my memories of driving the 575, and I haven't driven one for quite some time, were just a little bit, if I could say, tainted by the fact of the paddle shift was just really ordinary in those cars, as we saw this morning. And by adding the stick, the gate gears in there, it's just, the car's just literally come alive.
Just to talk about styling, you know, the Daytona was a very stylish car, very pointy nose, but kind of rounded. And then came the 365 GTC4, which was also a very elegant car.
It was.
But then they went to the 2+2 format, which is suitable for 2 adults in the front and 2 miniature-sized adults in the back who don't possess any legs, because they were about as useful in the back seat as a Porsche 911's rear seat. So you have this 365 GT4, which, and this is what it looks like, but that then led on to the 400, and then the 412. Also, it's basically the same, straight lines to them. And if you do want an investment Ferrari, they're probably the least investable cars, but they're by far the cheapest. Yeah. So a Mondial or a 400 or a 412 is your way in. And you can get one for under 100 grand. Under 100 grand sounds like a bargain, doesn't it? But that's your way into the Ferrari ownership stable. But then came the 456, and thankfully what happened is Enzo one day got cross with one of the engineers, came into the design studio, confiscated the steel ruler so he could smash someone over the knuckles with it. And the designer, whose name is up here, I've forgotten for the moment, started having to sketch in crayon and pencil and came up with the fantastic design of the 456. And then that led on many years later to the 550 and the 575. And this road is incredibly bumpy, so we're starting to see the limitations of this car now, aren't we? I should tell you that some of the stories I tell on this channel are not true, so you can judge for yourself whether they are or not. You got to know the roads, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And
look at the concentration on his face. Can you see how hard he's working?
I wouldn't normally be concentrating this hard. I just don't want to damage this car on this rough road. But
no.
Yeah, look, we've really enjoyed driving both 575s today, Stu.
Yeah.
Paddle shift and, of course, the manual conversion. And you'd have to do it. It's a worthwhile investment. It doesn't destroy the integrity of the vehicle at all. In fact, it adds to it, in my view. And I think in the market's view, it will add to it as well.
Yeah, it's a fabulous car. Okay, Mark, that's it. How's the fuel looking? We're out.
Fuel lights on.
This is not a seat you can relax and fall asleep in. It's going, nah, this is the correct position for you. Just accept it. Yeah. Suck it up, princess. And they're nicely ventilated with that Daytona style ribbing. So you're getting air underneath them. You don't get sweaty back syndrome.
You've got to have the Daytona seats if you're getting one of these.
Yeah, it's really fun. You've been remarkably sensible today, Mark.
I have been, haven't I? I'm really treating this car with kid gloves and respecting it for what it is.
I wonder what this fuel cap's worth.
98.
It's got a little spot for it there. Look at that. Bargain. Why would you have electric when you can pay that? A tip for newbies. Yeah. It's very easy to cross thread that. Just you've got to have the right touch. Like everything Ferrari, you've got to have the right touch.
Gentle.
Numero 4. Well, there is luggage space, but no room for the kiddies. Yep. "20 years on, you get the sticky plastic syndrome." They had a sort of vulcanized rubber coating on them, and they feel a bit tacky.
They're all the same. You know, my 360, when I got it, had that was a mess. I had to get that redone. And
what's more, it comes off on your finger. You just touch it, and then your fingers are sticky. It actually comes off. So you know you've been driving this car.
So the good people at Cavallino in Sydney. and fix that for you.
Yep. Oh, what's more, I've left fingerprints there
You
too.
have, yeah.
Oh, I bet not.
Yeah,
And if I try and wipe it, it'll make it worse.
Just make it worse. Don't worry
Okay,
about
don't touch it. Bad Stuart. In this Tour de France blue, with the tan or the sable interiors, these cars surely are the epitome of understated elegance. Sure, they catch your eye, but they're relatively quiet, so they're not cars for show-offs. If you want to attract attention, maybe go for something louder, in classic Rosso Corsa, of course. Which one would Mark or I prefer to own? I think that's pretty obvious by now. But which one is the more valuable? The totally original F1 transmission car, or the 575M that Miles has converted back to manual? To my eye, indistinguishable from original. Well, scarcity matters. Given that only 12% of the 2000 cars were manuals, and literally only 69 of those were right-hand drive manuals, one could easily argue the manual car is considerably more valuable, even though it's modified in a strict sense. Perhaps it's worth remembering the M in 575M doesn't mean Maranello, it means modificata. Now, I can't afford any of these cars, but maybe you can. Given the history of classic Ferrari prices in recent years, and particularly cars with a gated manual, if you can afford one, it would seem to be a sound long-term investment. Regarding these two cars, if you do want to own one of them, or any classic Ferrari for that matter, we suggest you talk to Miles at Cavallino Motorsport. Yes, you can buy one, but please, special request, can we keep them in Australia? Hey, thank you for watching today. It's been a long video and I do hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back working on my basket case Porsche 928 EV project next week, and hopefully many more classic Ferraris to be seen on the channel. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Miles. It's been emotional. It really has. Oh hey, you made it right through to the end of the video. Congratulations. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please share it with your motoring friends. And above all, click the little subscribe thing down here so you can see the latest videos when we bring them out, hopefully each week. I look forward to seeing you soon.